Good morning, friends. How are you? Today we're going to continue with Chapter 11 of Charlotte's Web, The Miracle. The next day was foggy, kind of like this morning. Everything on the farm was dripping wet. The grass looked like a magic carpet. The asparagus patch looked like a silver forest. On foggy mornings, Charlotte's Web was truly a thing of beauty. This morning, each thin strand was decorated with dozens of tiny beads of water. The web glistened in the light and made a pattern of loveliness and mystery like a delicate veil. Even Lurvy, who wasn't particularly interested in beauty, noticed the web when he came in with the pig's breakfast. He noted how clearly it showed up, and he noted how big and carefully built it was. And then he took another look and saw something that made him set his pail down. There, in the center of the web, neatly woven in block letters, was a message. It said, "Some pig." Lurvy felt weak. He brushed his hands across his eyes and stared harder at Charlotte's Web. Can you see the message? Some pig. "I'm seeing things," he whispered. He dropped to his knees and uttered a short prayer. He walked back to the house and called Mr. Zuckerman. "I think you better come down to the pig pen," he said. "What's the trouble?" asked Mr. Zuckerman. "Anything wrong with the pig?" "Not exactly," said Lurvy. "Come and see for yourself." The two men walked silently down to Wilbur's yard. Lurvy pointed to the spider's web. "Do you see what I see?" he asked. Zuckerman stared at the writing on the web. Then he murmured the words, "Some pig." Then he looked at Lurvy. Then they both began to tremble. Charlotte, sleepy after her night's exertion, smiled as she watched. Wilbur came and stood directly under the web. "Some pig," muttered Lurvy in a low voice. "Some pig," whispered Mr. Zuckerman. They stared and stared for a long time at Wilbur. Then they stared at Charlotte. "You don't suppose that spider," began Mr. Zuckerman, but he shook his head and didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he walked solemnly back up to the house and spoke to his wife. "Edith, something has happened," he said in a weak voice. He went into the living room and sat down, and Mrs. Zuckerman followed. "I've got something to tell you, Edith," he said. "You'd better sit down." Mrs. Zuckerman sank into the chair. She looked pale and frightened. "Edith, I think you had best be told that we have a very unusual pig." A look of complete bewilderment came over Mrs. Zuckerman's face. "Homer Zuckerman, what in the world are you talking about?" "Oh, this is a very serious thing, Edith," he replied. "Our pig is completely out of the ordinary." "What's unusual about the pig?" asked Mrs. Zuckerman, who was beginning to recover from her scare. "Well, I don't really know yet," said Mr. Zuckerman, "but we have received a sign, Edith, a mysterious sign. A miracle has happened on this farm. There is a large spider web in the doorway of the barn cellar right over the pig pen, and when Lurvy went to feed the pig this morning, he noticed the web because it was foggy, and you know how a spider's web looks very distinct in a fog. And right sprang in the middle of the web were the words, 'Some pig.' The words were woven right into the web. They were actually part of the web, Edith. It says 'some pig' as clear as can be. There can be no mistake about it. A miracle has happened, and a sign has occurred here, on earth, right in our farm, and we have no ordinary pig." "Well," said Mrs. Zuckerman, "it seems to me you're a little off. It seems we have an unusual spider." "Oh, no, it's the pig that's unusual. It says so right there in the middle of the web." "Maybe so," said Mrs. Zuckerman. "Just the same, I want to look at that spider." "It's just a common gray spider," said Zuckerman. They got up and walked to the yard, to Wilbur's yard. "You see, Edith, it's a common spider." Wilbur was pleased to receive so much attention. Lurvy was still standing there, and Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman, all three, stood for an hour reading the words over and over and watching Wilbur. Charlotte was delighted at the way her trick was working. She sat without moving a muscle and listened to the conversation of the people. When a small fly blundered into the web just beyond the word pig, Charlotte dropped quickly down, rolled the fly up, and carried it out of the way. After a while, the fog lifted, the web dried off, and the words didn't show so plainly. The Zuckermans and Lurvy walked back to the house. Before they left the pig pen, Mr. Zuckerman took one last look at Wilbur. "You know, I've thought all along that this pig of ours is a solid pig. He's a pig as solid as they come. You notice how solid he is around the shoulders?" "I sure do," said Lurvy. "I've always noticed that. He's quite a pig." "He's long and smooth," said Zuckerman. "That's right," agreed Lurvy. "He's smooth as they come. He's some pig." When Mr. Zuckerman got back to the house, he took off his clothes and put on his best suit. Then he got in the car and drove to the minister's house. He sat with the minister and said that a miracle had happened on the farm. So far, said Zuckerman, only 4 people know about this miracle. Myself, Edith, the hired man, and you. Don't tell anyone else. We don't know what it means yet, but maybe if I give some thought to it, I'll explain it in my sermon. By the way, does the pig have a name? Why, yes, my niece calls him Wilbur. She's an odd child, full of notions. She raised the pig on a bottle, and I bought him from her when he was a month old. He shook hands with the minister and left. Secrets are hard to keep, and long before Sunday came, news spread all over the county. Everybody knew. Everyone's coming to see it, huh? Everyone knew that the Zuckermans had a wondrous pig. People came from miles around to look at Wilbur to read the words on Charlotte's Web. The Zuckermans' driveway was full of cars and trucks from morning till night. Fords and Chevys and Buick Roadmasters and GMC pickups and Plymouths and Studebakers and Packards and DeSotos with gyromatic transmissions and Oldsmobiles with rocket engines and Jeep station wagons and Pontiacs. The news of the wonderful pig spread clear up into the hill. The farmers came rattling down in buggies and buckboards to stand hour after hour at Wilbur's pen, admiring my friend Miss Chisty just walked in, admiring the miraculous animal. All said they had never seen such a pig before in their lives. When Fern told her mother that Avery had tried to hit the Zuckerman spider with a stick, Mrs. Arable was so shocked that she sent Avery to bed without supper as punishment. In the days that followed, Mr. Zuckerman was so busy entertaining visitors that he neglected his farm work. He wore his good clothes all the time now, got right into them when he got up in the morning. Mrs. Zuckerman prepared special meals for Wilbur. Lurvy shaved and got a haircut. Mr. Zuckerman ordered Lurvy to increase Wilbur's feedings from 3 meals a day to 4 meals a day. On Sunday, the church was full. The minister explained the miracle. He said that the words on the spider's web proved that human beings must always be on the watch for the coming of wonders. All in all, the Zuckerman's pig pen was at the center of attraction. Fern was happy, for she felt that Charlotte's trick was working and that Wilbur's life would be saved. But she found that the barn was not nearly as pleasant. Too many people. She liked it when she could be alone with the animals. And we'll continue tomorrow. Take care.